just want to say we're so happy to have you on the podcast. People may not know, we actually go back a few years. So I'm from New Zealand, you're in New Zealand, you're from New Zealand. I used to work for you and your husband a few years back. Crazy story, small world. When I was like first year marketing student, I sort of worked as a marketing assistant for your construction company, right? Back in the day.
That's right. Yeah.
Nuts.
And now look at you, Joe.
I've known you as a boss. Look at me now. Look at me now, Liz. No, but I've known you as a boss, and you're a great boss. And so really looking forward to this interview.
Great. Yeah, well, looking forward to seeing where you're going to go too, Joe. It's exciting to see New Zealanders go around the world.
Oh, yes. Amazing. Well, I think we can jump right into it, Liz. And the first question we wanted to ask you is, can you tell us a little bit about your business, chnnl, and kind of where the idea came from to start it?
Yeah, absolutely. So my background is actually a registered nurse. I worked as a nurse, and then I followed my dream to become a doctor. And I went to medical school, and unfortunately, when I got out of the lecture theatres and into clinical placement, I experienced a toxic workplace environment. And for the first time in my life, I actually experienced mental health problems myself. So I was having severe panic attacks, thinking about going to this clinical placement. And the reason being was that there was actually a bully that was in that department, and he decided that it was me that he was going to bully. And unfortunately, it really took a toll on my mental health. And so as a result, I went to the dean of the medical school and I said, that's it, I'm done. I'm going to go back and be a nurse. And to my surprise, he said, no, I am sick and tired of hearing about the young, brighter students that we have leaving this profession because of our workplace environments. So he said, look, why don't we do something about it? What do you think we should do? So like any good academic and scientist, I said, let's do some research. So for the past 5 years, I've been studying workplace mental health, and in particular around those really, really hard issues around bullying, sexual harassment and discrimination in the workplace. And so just to cut a very long story short, one of those results of that research was that people requested an app. They wanted to have a safe channel from the front line to the boardroom or to senior leaders in an organisation to actually tell them what was going on for them, about their mental health and about the environment that they were working in. And so it's a fully anonymous app, and people do a daily check-in. They tell us about their mental health, and that's how it works. So amazing uptake. I was so surprised at how much people were really appreciating a tool like this, a safe channel to be able to talk about mental health.
That's actually a really inspiring story. I'm of course hearing it now for the first time, so I find it a super inspiring story, Liz. Now, so that's pretty much then how chnnl came to exist, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And so what would you say is the mission of chnnl? What are you trying to achieve?
Yes, yeah. So I didn't actually have the right words when we started, but now I know that it's something called psychological safety. So it's around people feeling safe to bring their whole selves to work. So we know that we're not robots. We can't turn off our emotions. And so we bring that baggage to work with us. And also we can bring good stuff as well from outside of work too. So it's our mission and our vision is a workplace that truly understands mental well-being.
Wow. It's super inspiring, Liz, and amazing to hear your story again and how passionate you are about it. Kind of just continuing on that vein, you just mentioned that we can't switch our emotions off, and we can't just come to work and be a robot. But I guess I have the sense, I don't know if it's true, that some organizations still expect people to do that in some way, that they expect you just to be professional at work and to kind of leave your personal life at the door. Why do you think that personal well-being is such an important factor of work?
Absolutely. So you can look at all the international data, and it shows that people that are healthy and have well approaches to work are more productive. So therefore, we're going to be able to increase our revenue and our profits through investing in human capital, which is the right words to use when you're talking to board members, because boards care about two things. They care about their reputation and they care about increasing profits. So actually, the business case here is about investing in our human potential to increase those two things. And we can show that directly with our return on investment calculator that we use. And it's really, really inspiring to say to staff, look, you might not prioritize your mental health, but actually you need to. You need to for this organization, because it actually makes you more productive and it makes you more innovative, and it helps actually the whole organization to be uplifted. So organizations that aren't prioritizing their staff mental health will notice these effects in their bottom line.
And do you feel that there's an increasing understanding in organizations of the importance of mental health for employees in the workplace?
Yeah, super interesting. So there's something that's just happened which has radicalized this whole area, and that is legislation has changed. So in the UK, the Health and Safety Acts have changed. We in Australia and New Zealand follow after the UK changes. And so that is now making directors personally liable for psychological safety in the workplace. And it goes on to actually say, like bullying, fatigue, burnout, and sexual harassment. So now they don't have a choice. We have WorkSafe for organisations like that are coming in and actually investigating organisations if they don't actually have psychological safety in their workplaces. Now, the other funny thing that's coming is actually we're getting a lot of hits out of Japan and Korea as well. And so when I looked into those, actually they have had legislation changes as well. So some of their labour laws have changed, and not just are they liable for fines. In Japan, a company director is now liable for prison time if they don't actually address some issues in the workplace. And that's in particularly a word called karoshi, which is workplace suicide due to not having a psychologically safe place to work.
So it's not even just this this nice to have anymore. It's actually being legislated more and more around the world that you need to take care of your people and put a focus on it. One thing I was interested in, Liz, and kind of changing tack a little bit is kind of like this sense, we're kind of framing this whole episode around the sense of the power of knowing your people. And I was really interested in some of the words on your website where you talk about that a lot of organizations rely kind of on hearsay and the sense of like not actually really knowing who their people, well, how their people are going. I guess the question I'd have is like, in general, how well do you think organizations know their people?
Yeah. So the status quo right now is a yearly, or even some organizations do 3 yearly, culture surveys where they check the engagement of staff. But now we're realizing that a one-off checkpoint is actually not cutting it. You might be a really great day when you answer that survey, or you might have a really bad day, which might skew those results. So there's a lot of bias in those one-off checkpoints. So that's an issue. And the other issue is people don't feel safe. So everything we do at Channel is anonymous. And that is so, so important. Every time we do our research studies, that's the one thing that comes every time is I'll tell you what's going on, but I have to be anonymous. And this is particularly true in highly regulated industries. So we work mostly in hospitals and in the airline industry. So for instance, if a doctor or a pilot says that they've got some mental distress happening, they could lose their license. Our registration could be taken away. So that's a huge barrier for people being able to be honest about what's happening. And so being anonymous, and we make sure that all of our users know that they are 100% safe in what they tell us. People tell me when they have a workplace suicide or someone that goes off on extended sick leave from burnout, that they're always so surprised. They're like, we thought that person was doing so well. They were achieving all their targets and, they're the high performer. And then they've just fallen off this cliff and they're just, not doing so well. So they've said that there was no warning signs there. And I think it's about actually the two sides of it. So the organization being able to get information to recognize that early, but also to give individuals, especially high performers, the ability to track and measure their own mental health and say, actually, I'm really redlining it now. I think I need to get some help now, rather than waiting to get into that distress mode.
So it's kind of like that sense of like self-awareness as well, of like you as an employee actually knowing, getting a sense of how you're doing through the app as well.
And I think it comes back again as well to what you were saying before, Liz, about that psychological safety. Because if as an organization we are surprised when indeed someone is committing suicide, let's take the worst case scenario, because we thought that person was doing so well, that also says, of course, something about the environment and about how that person was not feeling that they could actually say that they were not doing so well. So I think it comes back to that aspect as well. I'd like to continue on that a little bit when it comes to the data that you were talking about and that they are anonymous. So perhaps could you tell us something about what have some of the employers that you work with done with the data made available to them via the chnnl app? So who's usually involved with the initiative? Is that HR? Is that maybe the managers? Maybe it's both. And how have they used the information that they received for good?
Yeah, absolutely. We have so many amazing stories, and that just really, really excites our team. And we try and share as many of those stories as we can because, that's what keeps this passion going. And so I can just share one from this week. We had an amazing story where somebody was feeling like they were being harassed. And so they were able to put through just a little bit of information about that. Now, it didn't reach the threshold for what would be termed bullying. So they would not, HR would never know about that, but it was to a level of incivility where it was causing disruption in the team. They weren't feeling like they were performing at their best because they were coming in and this environment was just not great. And then working from home, they couldn't go and have conversations with other managers because they felt that, there was no access there. So they were able to use the app and they were able to say, hey, I've had these couple of incidents happen, a really direct conversation over, like some communication channels that organisation was using. And they were able to raise that anonymously. What happened was that the person who was running the channel program in that organisation could go to that team and say, hey, we're having some reports about some difficult communication styles happening. Can we talk about that as a team? So what is above the line? What's below the line? What do we accept? And so it was just like an early warning signal for that organisation that there wasn't something right in that team. And it gave them a heads up so they could go and prevent this. So it could have turned into a full-on bullying complaint, but we were able to intervene so much earlier and get that team support. And now everybody is really, really back to performing at their prior levels. So that's a great story about early intervention.
And kind of like getting something in at the root before it becomes a huge deal and then there's a whole lot more ramifications. That's really cool.
Absolutely. And like the costs, so organisations and personal grievances, it costs them in turnover, it costs them in re-recruitment and retraining. It's huge to an organisation. So if we can invest a little bit now, early on, we can save ourselves a whole lot of problem. And, we talk about culture is key. If you're having these rapid turnovers of staff, that's got to do something to your culture.
Yeah.
Sure. And you may have touched on it there, Liz, but I'm interested to understand more about some of the insights that employers specifically can get from the app, from the chnnl app. Mm-hmm. Your website talks about these unique insights that an organization can pull out of the data. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we have is actually both quantitative and qualitative data that comes through the app. So it'll ping you every day and say, hey, how's your day today? We ask you some simple questions around your work, and that is actually 90% sensitive for detecting anxiety, depression, and sleep disorders. And then the next thing we do is we say, would you like to journal about your day? And this really surprises me. A lot of people journal. So some people use it as a dear diary, and they'll write, I had cornflakes for breakfast, which is interesting. But then a lot of people will use it as a feedback. So they'll say, actually, I had this great idea for X, Y, and Z. I'd like to just put that forward. So a lot of people use the journal in different ways. They can choose to keep the journal private, just to them, or they can choose to share it. 90% of people choose to share their journal with their organisation. So what we then do is we have algorithms and natural language processing that run, and they run on that free text data. And that is what gives us those really, really unique insights. So as I said at the beginning, we bring our whole selves to work, and we get all these insights about personal life going on, work life, things that you probably wouldn't really voice to other people, but in a diary form, we get these unique insights as to what is actually really going on for people. And for one of our organisations, they were really concerned about their staff. They knew that they were really in distress, and they were thinking it was to do with work. But really what we found through the data is that it wasn't. It was actually personal life issues that were affecting on work. And so when the organisation knew that, they're like, oh, it's not all us. Now we can have a bit more compassion for our staff, because we actually know that they've got financial issues, they've got relationship issues, they've got kid issues. It's able to get that really, really, I think, as you said, knowing your people in a new way.
That's really cool that you're not just relying on, say, like yes or no answers or 1 to 10 scales, but it's actually that natural language processing that's happening to get a real sense from what people are actually writing. That's really cool.
Yeah, and it's so sensitive from a research point of view. The crazy thing is it's so accurate. So even though you don't know yourself what you're kind of writing, this the background and the science behind it, we can kind of detect those changes. We can say, actually, 2 weeks ago, you guys were writing like this, and now it's changed. The words that you've used have changed. And so we can pick out those real subtle changes, which enables us to give organisations a heads up. Actually, this person's just not right at the moment. We can do some interventions early. Yeah.
Wow.
I think something else that's really cool about this is how this emphasizes, again, that personal well-being, there is really no personal well-being and well-being at work, but that it's one big well-being for people. I think it really shows when you talked about, I actually found that super interesting to hear how people are journaling, but how they are also journaling sometimes about indeed what's going on in their personal lives. And how you said as well that apparently sometimes things are going on in people's lives, and it makes total sense, I think, that if they worry about their finances or about their kids or about anything else that's going on in their personal life, that will affect how they are feeling in the workplace. So I think that's also, again, something that's very interesting.
Exactly. And with COVID, it's so important, right? We're all working from home. We can't get away from this work-life balance because it's now in our bedrooms. So we really, really need to understand what's going on for people if we're going to support their well-being.
So, Liz, how has the response been that you've been getting so far from the users of the app? And then I mean basically the people working in organizations that have been using Channel. What has their response been?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work with a lot of doctors and nurses and paramedics. Now, they're really, really busy professionals. They don't really have time to even eat lunch, let alone take a wellbeing check. So what we need to do is meet them where they're at. And we just build it into some of those usual patterns that they have in their day. So if it's a handover, we will just say, take the 30 seconds to do that check-in with your wellbeing at a handover point. So we just build it into their normal busy routine. And that is how we get a lot of sustained behavioural change, which is great. And it's really, really interesting because a lot of these busy professionals, they have no idea how they're tracking with their mental health. They think, oh, it's just because I've done 12 days in a row of shift work that I'm feeling like crap. But actually what we can tell with the science behind it, that there's actually a bit more going on here, and we think that you should actually take a moment out to support yourself. So getting those insights for users is so incredible. And, you know, we like to think that we know ourselves, but Facebook has proven that they know more about us than what our significant other does. So why don't we leverage tech for good and start to use it to help our mental health instead of eroding our mental health?
It's really interesting to hear as well. Like, I think there's still such a difference. Well, you tell me if you agree as well. I think there's still a difference in terms of how people view their physical health to their mental health. And, you know, potentially it's changing, but, you know, especially with COVID and things happening now, like we're so stringent about our physical health and how that affects other people and that sort of thing. But I think that kind of, you know, that sense of mental health and its impact on our work and the fact that you can't just do 12 days work in a row and be okay. Like that's actually, do you feel like that's changing a little bit?
No, I don't. This is really sad. I when I first started talking about this, I used to talk about mental health. I used to talk about all those kind of issues and those words. But now I have to reframe it, Joe, because there's so much stigma around it, especially when I'm talking to senior leaders. As soon as I say sexual harassment, they freak out that I don't want to know about that. And so I was like, well, actually, all of your people are actually all media outlets now. They could just jump on Twitter and just let it out. So you need to deal with it, even if you're really scared of it. So now I have to change the word. And I talk about high-performing teams. We talk about psychological safety. We talk about coaching, not counseling. And it's around reframing it in a positive way, because I think as soon as we talk about mental health, people go, "Oh, that's not me." Yeah. We just need to keep talking about it and reframing it for people so that we can actually help people, because we can't wait for stigma to go away and society to change. Yeah. We need to do something else in the meantime.
I imagine it has to do perhaps with the fact that a lot of people, they're just afraid of those kind of topics and they are afraid of talking about them, aren't they?
Yes. Yeah. It's just like talking about it is going to unleash something. But in fact, talking about it might actually prevent it. So it's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah. That's sad to think, like you were saying before, about the fact that in some industries, some industries or some companies, actually talking about it can be negative for your progression or for your career. And but it's I mean that sounds like it's sad that you can't just talk about it, but in terms of the way you reframe it, it sounds like that's the way to make progress. Very cool. Okay, so just kind of moving on, and we've only got a couple more questions actually. My question would be kind of like, you talked a bit about psychological safety and your vision and mission for Channel. But if we talk about, say, 5 years from now, where would you love to be with Channel?
Absolutely. Well, I would love every organisation to have a safe channel for their staff. And it might not be channel, but I really, really am passionate about people being able to have a safe place to be heard and to be cared for in return. We ask a lot of our staff every day to come to work and to give their all. And so all they're asking in return is to be listened to. And we might not be able to solve all their problems, but we can say it's a safe place to come to work and bring your whole self. And we will support you. And we want you to be performing and performing at your very best. So how can we get you there? So just reframing it completely, I think is where I'd like to be in 5 years' time.
I think that is a beautiful thing to wish for in 5 years' time. And now, speaking about beautiful things, what we always like to do, Liz, at the end of the episode, is we like to ask our guests to leave our listeners with a challenge, something that they can do on their individual level to make things a little bit better. So is there any challenge that you would like to leave our audience with?
Yeah, I actually was looking at some statistics just before this podcast, and I saw that Deloitte had actually released a big study about people going back into the workforce after being working from home due to COVID. And everybody had a sense of distrust than the people that they interviewed. And so I think it was up to nearly 32% of people felt like they didn't trust the organisation to support their mental health when they came back to work. So my challenge for people out there is, how can you build on that trust? How can you support your staff to trust you and to increase that psychological safety so they can bring their whole selves and be that safe channel for people?
Great challenge about building trust. How can we build psychologically safe environments? It's awesome. Thank you so much, Liz, for your time, and we really enjoyed this interview.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
And before we go, we just wanted to encourage everyone listening that if you did enjoy this episode and if you are enjoying the podcast, we'd love for you to subscribe and leave a review and tell a friend about our podcast, that would be so appreciated, right, Neely?
Absolutely. Spread the word, please.
Yes. Cool. We'll see you next time. Bye.